Before the next video begins, I actually wanted to drop a short video in here real quick to clear up something that I see a lot. A lot of people, when they make game assets, they ask, what's a good poly count? Is 10,000 too much? Is 20,000 too much? It depends, right? There's no guideline you can really use. It's going to vary depending on who you're working for, who your client is. There's just a bunch of different requirements there. I'm going to show you my personal way to determine if your model is as low poly as you can get it. You need to stop worrying about what the poly count is and figure out if you've made it as low poly as you can, because a really complex weapon or a complex character is obviously going to have way more polygons than, say, a glass bowl that you modeled in Blender, right? So the whole question regarding poly count, there's no real answer to that. The answer is to actually look at your model in wireframe and determine if it's as low poly as you can get it. Now the next video is going to show you the entire decimation process. I've already recorded it and I'm going to show you what the result looks like. So this is the high poly right here. Let me actually go into side view and turn on wireframe. So this is the high poly weapon and this is the low poly. See that? And actually, I don't know what these are doing. Let me hide that real quick. So once again, high poly and low poly. Let's look at the difference in triangle count. The high poly has 490,000 tries, and the low poly has about 38,000. This took me just about an hour to decimate into a low poly. It would have been quicker if I wasn't recording. So let me show you exactly how you determine what a good poly count is. Don't worry about the number down here. Worry about if this is as low poly as you can get it. And the way you do that is by simply going into wireframe mode. So with hard ops, you can just press Alt V. Alternatively, you can go in here to viewport display and turn on wireframe. Just make sure you have it selected. Hard ops will just do it for every piece, which is easier. Okay, so the way I do it, once I've made my low poly, is I kind of pan around here. Now, like I said, the next video is going to show you the full process if you want to watch that. But what I do is I just kind of zoom in to these areas and I look and I think, is there any additional geometry I can A, either remove, or B, remove that's, we could bake in? Because there's some geometry you just don't need, and there's other geometry that you can just bake the detail into. And you're going to see I actually already noticed an issue right here as I was recording. I have some extra geometry here. This is a piece that was going to be baked, so I can delete that out. But you're going to see, there's not too much left I could really do on this weapon. I mean, it's pretty empty. There's not too many additional bevels I could really make any lower. Maybe a little bit on this trigger, but I mean, honestly, this is about as low poly as I'm going to get it. You're going to see if I try to decimate, this portion down anymore, it's just going to become a bit too... Actually, that was okay. Maybe I will leave that. But if I try to decimate this down anymore, it's going to become a little bit too faceted, which I don't necessarily want. But there's certain areas you could always go back into and try to make it even lower, and you'll probably have some success. But you're going to see pretty much all of this is about as low poly as I can get away with. The moment I start trying to maybe decimate this down even more is when we run into issues and just too much faceting. So all you need to do when you're making a low poly is look at your model in wireframe and think to yourself, is this about as low poly as I can get this? Just looking at it. That's all you're doing. You're looking at the model and just thinking to yourself, is there any additional work I could do to make this a bit lower poly? If the answer is no, you're probably good to go and you don't need to worry too much about the triangle count. If the answer is yes, then go back and try to optimize it a bit more. So my advice to you is stop worrying about what your poly count is and start worrying about, is this as low poly as I can make it just looking at the wireframe? That is the way you should be approaching it. By doing that, you're naturally going to get yourself the best polygon count for that specific model, okay? So I hope the video makes sense, and in the next one we're just going to hop into the full decimation process for this weapon. You don't have to watch it if you're comfortable with the techniques I already showed you, but it is there in case you're curious.